Alrighty, everybody. Welcome into This Is Time to Made. And today we're reading through Matthew chapters 14 and 15 today. Yep. Alright, so let's just get into it. John the Baptist beheaded. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the report about Jesus, and he said to his attendants, "This is John the Baptist. He has risen from the dead. This is why miraculous powers are at work in him." Now Herod had arrested John and bound him and put him in prison because of Herodias, his brother's, Philip's wife, for John had been saying to him, "It's not lawful for you to have her." Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of the people because they considered John a prophet. On Herod's birthday, the daughter of Herodias danced for guests and pleased Herod so much that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked. Uh, Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist." The king was distressed, but because of his oath and his dinner guest, he ordered that her request be granted, and John beheaded in the prison, and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, who carried it to her mother. John's disciple came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. That's awful. That is awful. Can't believe somebody would want that. Alright. Jesus feeds the 5,000. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowd followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As the evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowd away so they can go to the village and buy themselves food." Jesus replied, "They do not go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here to me," he said, and he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to the heavens, he gave thanks and broke loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. The disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces that were left over. Then the number of those who ate was 5,000 men, besides women and children. Right. So as you can see here, Jesus broke that bread and served everybody. So that's where that image comes from, where he's breaking all the bread. Um, Jesus was a very, very interesting human being, to say the least. And I don't mean interesting in a bad way. I mean very, very interesting in a good way. Because he did miracles that, most people couldn't do, and people were always amazed by it. So Jesus walks on water. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, which he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that day, he wasn't there alone. The boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves, because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take cover, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat and walked on the water and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" Yeah. And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." When they had crossed, they landed in Gennesaret, and when the men of the place recognized Jesus, they sent the word to all the surrounding countries. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. So, um, you know, if you just go and touch Jesus Christ's cloak, you're pretty much healed. Um, as of today, when we say the name Jesus Christ, it does a lot of incredibly powerful stuff. So, that's why when you're in a, like, you know, I've seen a lot of paranormal videos where people will say Jesus Christ and the whole, like, thing just stops doing what it does. So, alright. That which defiles. Chapter 15. Then some Pharisees and teachers of the law came to Jesus from Jerusalem and asked, "Why do your disciples break the tradition of elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat." Jesus replied, "Why do you break the command of God for the sake of your tradition? For God said, 'Honor your father and mother,' and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. But you say, if anyone that declares that might have been used to help their father or mother is devoted to God, they are not to honor their father or mother with it. Thus, you knew fully the word of God for the sake of your tradition. You hypocrite! Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They should worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules." Jesus called the crowd to him and said, "Listen and understand. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them." When the disciples came to him and asked, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offered? Do you know that the Pharisees were offered when they heard this?" He replied, "Every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be pulled by the root. Leave them, they are blind. Guides If the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. Peter said, "Explain the parable to us." "Are you still dull?" Jesus asked them. "Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach, and then out the body? But things that come out of the person's mouth come from the heart, and defile them. For out of the heart will come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, and slander. These are what defiles a person, but eating with unwashed hands does not defile them." All right. So Jesus is giving his advice again about how you know we do I do it myself, and I'm not perfect. But he's saying whatever comes out of your mouth, you know, it defiles people, because when you say something that is very, very um not good, it'll defile your heart because it's what's on your heart. Now, you know, this is a hard situation because people do get bullied, and you can always just kind of tell who's, well, you can't naturally tell, because sometimes people will blame others and prosecute others and bring people to a point where they look so bad in their life that, like, people around them start believing the things that they say about them. And I've been defiled quite a bit in my life. I've been defiled by other people. And I really, really try to be the best human being possible. But there's a lot of situations that just bring me down to a point where I just genuinely cannot help it. And it's so hard for me, you know, on a daily basis. I go through a lot of stuff that you guys don't know about. And the world comes down on me pretty hard for some of the stuff, some of the simple stuff I do. Like, I'm at the point now where, and I've been at this for years, where, like, I can do something so simple and it'll upset everybody, and I'll be the worst person on the face of the planet for doing just simply that. And even on social media, you guys probably don't see it, but I have it happen to me. I used to have it. No, I have it happen to me on occasions where, like, a whole bunch of people, a mob of people, will just go after me for something I said or did. You know, and the weirdest part is when you stand up for yourself, because I believe that to be okay. You get a mob of people after you, protecting somebody that naturally doesn't need protected. That, you know, we've gotten to a point where, you know, like 30 different people protect one person or stand up for one person, while one person gets completely defiled and destroyed right in front of everybody. It's so bizarre, but we're in a time like that where, like, people don't stand up for each other, or people don't stand up for themselves, but there's people that'll stand up and back them up, simply and it happens to me all the time. It happens to me all the time. I'll go through a bad situation, and because they're so popular and more important on YouTube, I get broken down and destroyed by 20, 30 people that are like sitting there spouting nonsense. So, all right. The faith of the Canaanite woman. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite from woman from the vicinity came to him, carrying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon possessed and suffering terribly." Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciple came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps carrying out after us." Right? She keeps crying out after us. He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Yes. Yes, it is, Lord, she said. Even the dogs eat crumbs that fall from the master's table. Then Jesus said to her, Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that moment. So, Jesus Christ really saw that woman's faith by what she said and how she basically explained what would happen with the bread. So, right. Jesus feeds 4,000. Jesus left there and went along the Sea of Galilee. Then he went up on a mountainside and sat down. Great crowds came to him, bringing the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and laid them at his feet, and healed them. The people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled made well, the lame walking, and blind seeing. They praised the God of Israel. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way. His disciples answered, Where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a crowd? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied, and a few small fish. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then he took 7 loaves and the fish, and he gave thanks. He broke them and gave them to the disciples, and they turned to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. Afterwards, the disciples picked up the 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was 4,000 men, besides women, children. After Jesus Christ had sent the crowd away, he got into the boat and went to the vicinity in Magadan. Right, so that's it for today. So, yeah, Jesus did some really crazy stuff. He took 7 loaves of bread and fed 4,000 with it. Like, incredible. Like, and, we all know that the people weren't exactly their fullest, but they still got fed and still had food. So, you know, it's just something to think about how, like, you have to be grateful for everything to be kind of like Jesus Christ. You know, that's one thing I will say. But Jesus Christ did stand up for things that he knew were wrong. And we can go back to Matthew earlier in Matthew where he snapped on people over the fact that the girl was just sleeping and not actually dead or not actually harmed for him to heal. So there's a lot of proof in here that Jesus Christ wasn't all that much of a hippie, but he was a very, very nice human being. You can be a nice human being, but you don't have to be a hippie. So, and a lot of people get that confused, and a lot of people are like, be like Jesus Christ. Like, I know a lot of people who are genuinely like that. I don't talk to them anymore, of course, because I don't live in that destination anymore. But I used to know a lot of people who were like that. They thought Jesus Christ was this, like, hippie. And he wasn't this hippie. He was a very, very, he was a nice person. And he was a very kind person. But he also, and he had a lot of compassion, but he also didn't like certain things either. Didn't like when certain things were done to him. And that's something you will see in here. Like most of the time, like even after the death of John the Baptist, Jesus could Jesus could have literally like did much worse, but the way he handled it was much different. See, the one thing I will point out about that, and that happens a few times in the Bible, where like something will happen like that, and they move on. Jesus Christ moved on. Yeah, it was a sad moment for Jesus Christ here, but Jesus Christ tried to go somewhere, be alone for a little bit, and then move on with his life. That's something that we don't do these days is, move on with our life as easily. You know, there's a lot of times that I see people, they just linger about on something. Like even some people in my own family. But at the end of the day, it's on you to choose to learn to accept things and just move on. Because if you linger about, you're gonna stir up all that negative energy. You're gonna stir up a bunch of anger and angst, and you're gonna be stuck in that position for a long time in your life. And when you do come out of it, you might even be like, why was I stuck on that all this time? Yes, things like death are hard to cope with. It is a very, very hard thing to cope with. But at some point you gotta learn to let things go. You gotta learn to let your people you gotta learn to let your family rest and all that, you know. So my advice to anybody who's dealing with that kind of stuff or you had a problem and you're lingering about on it, move on from it, man. Because it's gonna be the best thing you did with yourself. Jesus Christ didn't linger on somebody's death. So yeah. Jesus Christ, you know, it wasn't as sad as what people would expect it, but you don't have to be sad to know that Jesus Christ cared. Jesus Christ, was baptized by the guy. So anyway, with that said, have a blessed day, take it easy, and actually I forgot to say it, if you like this video, please like it, hit the subscribe button, and I'll be seeing you next time, and God bless.